famously said that one of the reasons why Magnus is able to, really, well, put himself forward as the greatest of all time is because he is so accurate across all disciplines, classical, rapid, and blitz, and that his actual accuracy when it comes to rapid and blitz doesn't decrease that much compared to some of the other players. So for example, I hate to say this, but Fabiano playing classical, you compare the accuracy of his moves to when he plays blitz, there's a much bigger difference compared to when Magnus, for example, plays classical and blitz, if that makes sense. So we are
basically make good moves, helpful, and Magnus is amazing at making great moves and all these time controls. And I think we have some moves, maybe. At least I see. Pawn.
We appear to have one move. Game. Yeah,
we have one move. Okay. Ding, opening with the D4. Not really a surprise, has to be said.
No, he does appear to be that somewhat rare creature in today's top chess, somebody who doesn't really vary his opening approach that much. I think most people playing at the level he's playing, and he is very, very clear top 3 player in the world. And I think at some point he overtook Fabi as number 2, but Magnus at the top and him and Fabiano being clearly number 2 and number 3 in some order has been the established order of things for a while. His repertoire is arguably the least flexible of the 3, but he obviously compensates for that by knowing his stuff incredibly well, which allows him not to jump from E4 to D4 and C4 and back again.
I still think it's a weakness. He's doing well with white, but in the candidates we also saw him struggle a bit sticking to the same repertoire with black. But we have liftoff and action on both boards. Let's jump maybe into the World Champions game first. Magnus Carlsen with white against Hikaru Nakamura. And they're playing Peter, what in the industry we call a Queen's Gambit declined.
Yeah, and this is a topic we've discussed over the years quite a bit, because Hikaru, growing up, he was quite obviously a tremendously gifted tactical player, and his repertoire definitely reflected that, because he, against 1z4, he came into prominence as an incredibly good King's Indian player, sort of a follower in the footsteps of the greatest King's Indian players of the past. And then he started playing in the absolute elite tournaments, and gradually he switched to quote unquote the correct repertoire, the repertoire which doesn't allow you as much scope for immediate counterplay, doesn't maybe allow you to play for a win as much with black, but does give you a much better chance of mathematically equalizing out of the opening. And this is what we see today once again. He is playing maybe the most solid line of the Queen's Gambit declined.
So this is the King's Indian, which is a riskier approach. And what he's playing now is, establishing a presence on d5 in the center. And after e3, this is where it gets interesting, because Nakamura in the past has championed the moves b6 and c5 both. But this time he returns to the move knight bd7, which was all the rage around like 2010, 2011, but recently has been a little less en vogue, I would say. Magnus himself lost a big game here in the World Championship match against Vishy Anand in whenever that was, 2014.
2014, yeah.
And most top players, I think, arrive to the conclusion, if I allow them to go c5 and give them all that space, I might not lose, I might not be much worse, but I will not enjoy the experience that much. So a bit curious that Hikaru goes for this again. Yeah. c6 here, you could write textbooks about if you should go h3 or bishop d3. h3 basically making a luft here and not determining this bishop yet, because it might go to a6 in one go. But bishop d3 is what Vishy played, and a very worthy alternative.
Yeah, and Also, once again, these are reasonably short games, so I don't think we need to go down too many theory rabbit holes. But c5 knight h5 is a whole other topic, which, as far as I could determine, was not necessarily refuted. But people have been kind of playing that less recently.
Yeah, 94 or
94
95 are the two
also
other main
exists,
lines in
yeah.
this position. But c6, you know, has been around, and h6 doesn't look like much, but it's a curious little move, because in my days, there were all these very sharp lines with white sacrificing a pawn and all hell breaking loose very quickly. But black has recently established, you know what, I don't need to hurry, I can play h6. If you move your bishop, I might go bishop a6. I might also play very slowly, some bishop b7, queen c8, bishop a6 later. And I'll be maybe slightly worse, but you will not crush me out of the opening. And that's what's happening here. By the way, guys, if you're not used to our dynamic, I'm good at openings, so I will speak a lot in the first 5 minutes, and then I'll shut up, because after that, it's like true skill taking over there. The professionals shall handle it.
Yeah, this is where I come in, right?
It is definitely your time to shine.
Not my favorite positions, I have to say, not really my bread and butter. That being said, it's interesting. I think we should probably have a look at what Ding has done, because this is all the rage. Back in, you know, the times where Peter was growing up and, you know, heeding words of wisdom from the likes of Botvinnik and Kasparov. If you would have played e3 and bishop d2 against the Nimzo, they would have laughed in your face. This is not the correct way. This is not critical, but this is now all the rage, Peter, basically.
Yeah, some versions of this are now extremely popular, due, I think, mainly to the fact that the main line, although this, in fairness, this wasn't
Right.
an Nimzo.
True.
This did start off as a Rogozin, but the point still stands. This seemingly incredibly slow reply to both the Nimzo and the Rogozin is a very, very new development. Although the positions you often get out of these structures are quite well known from classical examples, and they will have been a great number of games, let's say, in the early 20th century, which had positions we will very likely see around move 12 in the Dingler and Firouzja game. Because white, after starting somewhat slowly, actually sort of explodes into the action on the king side. And there will be, I think quite likely, there will be some very, very sharp play in the center. Because white often, if we look at the position they have on the board right now, white often just goes knight e5, f4, queen f3, queen h3, and just tries to give mate. And this slightly caveman approach is quite strong in very many cases in these positions. It's surprisingly difficult for black to handle properly.
I always felt like if you manage to stop white playing knight e5 here successfully, so for example, you have the knight on d7 and the bishop on d6, so Alireza just played bishop d6. If you manage to get knight d7 in first, I always actually quite like those positions for black where you've got control over e4, you can play knight e4 yourself, f5, actually do some similar stuff, especially given that what looked like a rather innocent move with a6 actually has a rather serious function in the position, which is to stop white playing knight b5 himself. But of course, Ding doesn't allow that and plays knight e5 immediately, stopping black completing his development with knight bd7 and queen e7. Mm-hmm. So very good move here. And I guess, yeah, as Peter said, if knight bd7, f4 will be the absolutely logical follow-up.
Which is why they play c5 first very often, to have at least the option of developing that knight to c6, where it puts some pressure on the white center as well. Right. And yeah, these positions have become very, very popular, I would say, in the past couple of years. And they do arise from a variety of openings, as we see now from the Rogozin, but also the bishop d2 Nimzo is definitely a line which, to my eyes, almost did not exist, let's say, 5 years ago. You knew that move could be played, but you felt rather, ashamed to even mention it. And now it's arguably maybe the main line of the Nimzo.
Right. Amazing. Do you know what sparked that? Because another event that has been taking place that has been of serious interest to serious chess nerds has been the Leela versus Stockfish computer chess championships, where the two best, well, we can't call them both engines, but one is an engine and one is a neural network, not to get too technical, but some of the stuff that these computers are producing now actually really inspires me. I don't know about you, Peter, but some of the ideas, there was that fantastic, I was actually in chat when Jan was talking about some of the matches the other day, but this concept in the Dragon, Jan, in the Leela, I don't, no point going into the details without having the board, but do you think a lot of these novelties have been inspired by these supercomputers recently, or is it just revisiting some old lines that somehow they thought, actually, this works and this is okay?
I think most of the progress is being driven by people working with better and better machines. If we talk about opening progress, I think it's very obvious that in particular the emergence of the neural networks is now a very large factor in what people are trying in the opening. Not all of it is of the equal value, but it's definitely what drives the thinking there, in particular at the very top level.
Very interesting stuff. And F4 on the board by Ding. So
yeah, by the way, we should address, because I'm reading the chat and I read like 800,000 times, please show live board. I'm not quite sure what we're talking about. This, what you see on the screen here, is the position that we currently have in our little tool. Sometimes we will move pieces around, and we have a little green button that producers, maybe we can put in the middle here, that will show green if it's the position they have on the board, and red when it's us analyzing. But this is the live board, and they're not playing on a physical board because it's an online tournament. So these are the actual ways the positions are displayed. So yeah, thanks a lot for the input. I'm sure there are many people feverishly working on improving it, but just for clarity for those who are a bit new to watching chess, they're not actually making moves on a chessboard, but they're playing online.
There are some requests to see some of the other players. As you can see, Magnus Carlsen there has dressed up for the occasion, donning a rather splendid jacket and James Dean-esque, maybe some kind of old Marlon Brando-esque haircut. We're getting requests for a visual on Hikaru Nakamura. Has he made a similar effort? Has he had a shave? Let's see. Can we?
Yeah, that's the particularly hot topic there. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion on why exactly the final of the Banter Blitz Cup, which finished a couple of days earlier, why that final went so badly wrong for Magnus when he played Firouzja. And I think one of the favorites, at least in terms of popular vote, is the answer that he should not have shaved more or less immediately prior to the game starting. And whether Hikaru shaved before the start of the tournament is now of even bigger importance, obviously, with those developments.
We will try and get visuals for confirmation there, guys. I'm sure we'll see that shortly. Why don't we talk about the Carlsen Nakamura again? Hikaru has just made a rather interesting move, Bishop D8, after a mass exchange of pawns, all relatively standard stuff, and has swizzled the bishop round to C7 to fight against its counterpart on F4. And Magnus just ignores it and says, you know what? You want to go bishop takes bishop? I'm going to go pawn takes bishop and have a gorgeous bind over the E5 square. And your bishop on A6 is kind of, it's a weird piece because it's pointing at absolutely nothing. How would you best describe this position, Peter, after Queen D2?
I like this quite a bit for white, because obviously of the spatial advantage he has. I think, on the other hand, black's position is incredibly solid, and if you imagine the same position with black actually managing to trade, let's say, a pair of rooks, obviously even better, all four rooks along the A file, I think the spatial advantage would matter a lot less. And also there's clearly a very large question right now of how white is intending to meet e6, e5, which is probably the most natural move black could make right now, trying to once again fight for the space in the center, trying to maybe trade off some of the slightly passive pieces he has. In general, he is cramped on his side of the board. Black is currently occupying basically the bottom two ranks on the board, the bishop on a6 and the knight on a6, being the only two scouts beyond the seventh rank. And he definitely needs some breathing space, but white often has good replies to e6, e5 in positions like this, and I've been looking at it, trying to see exactly what Magnus intends to do if Hikaru pulls the trigger.
Should we put it on the board? Does he want to take everything and play a move like rook a4 and just claim that?
Yeah, that would be one way. Sometimes just taking everything and replying with something like e3, e4 is also quite useful. Once again, because there's still a bishop on a6 and a rook on a8, which make black's reactions quite awkward in positions like this. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like the evaluation of the position very much depends on whether black can afford to do something like this. Because if e5 is not a move you can make comfortably, then you are somewhat stuck in a position with no real counterplay, and white will find a way to improve his situation here. Doubling on the A file is one thing you can try. Something along the lines of, I don't know, rook e1, b1, and then knight a4, b6 might start happening if you give white enough time. So
maybe I should explain some more. If you want to see both games in action, currently it's easiest to go to chess24.com. There's even, I'm not sure if this is for premium members, there's a button called multi-board below where you can see the boards next to each other. If not, you can switch between them, because here in the show we will switch to the position we currently deem interesting. Sorry, this is mainly for my Twitch guys out there, like, because we're caught in our little chess bubble. We've done this a million times, but for the people new to chess, because there's literally no other sport ongoing, this must all be very confusing. And of course, it's also a learning experience for us. Do we use that space to put on, all the boards in tiny windows and so on and so forth? So keep the input coming, but yeah, keep it civil, please, please. We all have feelings, except Lawrence. So Peter,
feeling less.
Stuff has been exchanged, and Magnus went queen to d4, not pawn to d4.
Yeah, that's also a move that wins an immediate tempo and places a queen on a very nice square. But it does allow black to connect the rooks on the back rank, which is something that he might be quite interested in. So right now, you would probably want to, like, knight a4 would be very strong if not for the fact that black can actually ignore the fork on b6 by playing bishop b5. Otherwise, it would, I think, be quite awkward for black to meet.
But sorry, I have to do more explaining. Sorry to keep interrupting, but we should get the base stuff. In the multi-board thing, there's an option called Customize, and you can choose the running matches. And then you will see both these if you need them next to each other. If not, you can also, have two browser tabs. Have one game here, have one game there. Yeah. And Magnus has played e4, opening up the position.
Yeah, so he's doing it in this order with the inclusion of queen d4 and rook e8. Also quite sensible, and he will always have at least a little bit of pull. But the question is just how much better you will be here with so much material being traded off, and black managing to solve some of the immediate problems. I quite like rook takes c4 though, because I think this indicates after bishop b5, which probably is the most natural reply right now. Magnus is intending something like rook a. Rook g4 might just be very strong instantly as well.
Might just win, yeah.
Yeah, as I just noticed.
Yeah.
So we are generating a very, very strong threat of rook g4 here, attacking the pawn on g7 and using the fact that the black pieces aren't really participating in the defense of the king side, at least not immediately. And also, we have the option of playing rook a e1. And if black just takes on e4, deciding to just physically remove the rook on the fourth, which is threatening rook g4, queen takes e4 is a very, very awkward move to meet right now. If black decides to trade, because we instantly generate a threat of queen h7 check, more or less forcing black to play g6, and then black, whenever black is forced to play g6 in these structures, white will find it quite easy to generate more immediate problems. Like bishop b3 seems to be a very, very strong reply to the move g6 here. It feels like this might just be quite bad for black. So Hikaru, I am, once again, Jan has already made a number of disclaimers. I'm going to follow in his footsteps and make a disclaimer of my own. We are, for the time being at least, until our brains are completely fried by events, we are not using computer assistance. So I don't actually know what the machine thinks about this position. I suspect it's much better for white, but I don't know. What I will say is that Hikaru clearly has to tread very, very carefully here if he is not to get steamrolled.
Let's switch our attention to the Ding versus Alireza game, because Ding played a lovely little move, actually, just a couple of moves back. I just want to illustrate something here, Jan. If we can flick back maybe 3 moves, because after Alireza played c takes d4, a lot of people would instantly, after c takes d4, sorry, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6. A lot of people here would, of course, just capture back on d4 without thinking. But Ding had other ideas. He saw that the bishop on c6 was lacking protection and found the gorgeous little move knight e2, meaning he's able to capture back on d4 with the knight, thus giving black an isolated queen's pawn and establishing a very strong knight on d4, blockading the isolated queen's pawn. Lovely little idea there. Once again, reinforcing for all of you guys who are starting chess and thinking about how do I improve my tactics, one thing I always say to my students is LPDO, loose pieces drop off. You always want to look out for loose pieces and try and take advantage of them. Ding did that. So I really like that idea. After e takes d4, white would have absolutely nothing there. In fact, probably black is maybe even for preference with a gaping hole on e4 to control. But knight e2, I think, allows Ding to try and fight for some advantage. That being said, still looks as though Alireza has got things under control, basically, in this position.
Yeah, I think this has to be fine for black. And this entire sequence with bishop e1 and then knight e2, I'm fairly certain I've seen this before. There were a number of games played either in this precise line via a slightly different move order, or at the very least very similar in the Isle of Man Grand Swiss at the end of 2019. And I think everything up to knight e2, bishop d7, knight takes d4 may have been played in at least one of those games.
Yeah, this is all well known to me, but I don't want to come across as the annoying kid that did his homework. So I love seeing the wonder in Lawrence's eyes about moves like knight e2.
I'm just trying to please the fans.
I know, I'm
they
just
love
teasing.
this stuff.
You know that.
Yeah, it's interesting that Ding more or less instantly takes on e4 there, because that choice did not seem to me like it was forced just yet. But I guess it was difficult to tolerate the knight on e4 for very long anyway.
And guys, thanks a lot for the feedback. And there are many people, believe it or not, working behind the scenes, trying to improve this. This is the first day, so cut us some slack. We all understand. And trust me, I would also like to see all the players on the screen. that there is room for improvement here. This is, the first ever online super tournament. It's been put together at very short notice because, there's a thing called Corona. Everyone's stuck at home. I am very, very thrilled by the field and by Magnus Carlsen, first and foremost, but also Chess24 and the whole group making this happen. So frankly, it makes me a little sad that I only see complaints all over my screens. Having said all that, let's get back to, I don't know whom. Magnus? Put Magnus on screen. Where he at?
Yeah, and Hikaru found an interesting way, a very innovative way of dealing with the threat of rook g4. He went rook d8 after rook takes e4, and then rook d5, hinting at both the option of maybe playing rook g5 if he is forced to do that. But I think mainly he gives himself an option of playing queen f8 if the pawn on g7 is attacked here. And that is quite smart, because it allows you to protect your king side by reasonably natural means, and also the queen on f8 will start looking at the c5 pawn, and maybe this will distract white from the thoughts of giving mate straight away. Being, at heart, still being a tactical hack that I grew up being, I would very much like to investigate whether I can go bishop b3 here, and after rook d3, which I suspect is the reply, if I can go bishop takes f7, rook e7 check, and sacrifice every single piece on the board and give mate. But I'm pretty sure the answer is no. And Magnus already, not being a tactical hack at heart, goes rook e4 instead. And Hikaru's bishop on a8 in the current position on the board, it looks a bit forlorn.
This reminds me of the classic game Karpov against Lautier, where Lautier ended up with a bishop here. He wasn't happy. Because
and in particular against Karpov, I think you feel like this may have been a poor choice, because you are unlikely to be forgiven for doing things like that. But then again, there are only three pieces left on the board, and Magnus will have to be very, very precise to make sure the bishop doesn't actually get out of the corner, because if you imagine the same position but with the bishop on some kind of a normal square like e6 or d7, black is instantly completely fine.
And it could be that Hikaru feels that no one puts bishop in a corner and he just brings it right back. I knew I would get Lawrence with a Dirty Dancing reference.
That was good. By the way, funny story. That's how I got into salsa. Yeah, because I learned Hungry Eyes, which was the track for all of you sickos that have actually seen Dirty Dancing. That was the first ever routine I did. How about that? Huh? Shout out.
Very happy to know about your.
I had no idea. Like, the Lawrence Trent origin story is always fascinating.
By the way, are we not actually very concerned for Hikaru here? I mean,
we are very, very concerned. Yes, it will still require some work, but I think once the bishop gets to Magnus just played bishop e4, and I think the bishop will probably drop back to f3,
right,
to make sure that it never gets attacked by the black pieces, and also covering the d1 square. We can start playing rook a7 at some point, and black will be completely tied up. It will be very, very difficult to nominate a move to make for black. But the big question I'm struggling with so far is finding a killing blow for Magnus in these types of positions, because it's with only, once again, I will reiterate that with only 3 pieces left, it's really not enough. As we see him instantly go bishop f3 there after rook d7. It's really not enough just to make sure that Hikaru can't move. As long as there are some passing moves which don't lose any material, you still need to find a way to exploit black's incredibly cramped situation. And I'm so far not really seeing it. Because rook a7 is a very pleasant move to make, but it doesn't generate a threat.
Well, Magnus played rook e1.
Yeah, I think actually switching once again to some kind of a plan involving play against the black king is a very sensible approach here. And after queen d8, I wonder if Magnus just intends to take and go
So-
rook e7, which probably wins the c pawn, but trades off more material. So it's a choice you would have to weigh very carefully here.
Could he also theoretically just ignore things after queen d8 and improve with, again, trying to improve this? Well, queen d8 was played.
Yeah, he just snap takes on
He
d8.
just
I think
snapped
for
it off,
Magnus,
yeah.
for Magnus, this has been a reasonably clear choice. But this,
Yeah.
I have a feeling, might not be enough, actually.
Yeah.
Although, very importantly, in the current position, if black goes rook c8, we do have rook
e8
e8 check.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you just play bishop d5, you never win that 3 against 2.
No.
Kind of
Rook e8
trust Magnus with such decisions. If he goes for it so quickly, I'm reasonably certain he thinks it's just winning.
Yeah, I think that's a fair bet. But that bishop ending, the c pawn quite clearly doesn't queen because the black king will get to e7 fast enough, and black will also be in time to play something like h4 followed by g5, because once again we're entering very technical territory. But if, let's say, in this position it is white to move and he goes h3 h4,
Rook e8 check played.
yeah, that endgame I think you never ever save. If white manages to fix the black structure on the light squares, there will always be enough weaknesses to play against. But with black probably having enough time to play h4 g5 f6, it becomes a bit more of a question whether your conversion is as trivial as all that. But yeah,
c6 and h4 f4 on the
we
board.
generally trust Magnus in matters of converting large advantages. So I think we'll go with the default setting here and presume that he has this under control.
So the world champion with an extra pawn trying to put away Hikaru Nakamura here in this endgame. Hikaru, as you do, puts his pawns on dark squares, goes f6, intending to play g5. Magnus centralizes his king. We will see if he converts. In the other game, Ding Liren versus Alireza. It looks like Alireza is comfortably equal, but no more than that. No, look, it looks pretty drawish. These opposite color bishops are often a strong indicator of the game ending peacefully.
Yeah, I think this should not be a problematic position for either side, frankly. If anyone is slightly better, it probably is black, because the bishop on d5, let's say if we play, if the queens stay on the board, black has a slightly more pleasant structure and so on. But I think you can very safely just take on d3 here, and you never ever lose that endgame.
Yeah, I think
Ding will take some time just to recheck that nothing bad happens to him. But take on d3, play king f2, bishop d2, g3, king e3, and yeah. I have a feeling even if you take, let's say, the d4 pawn off the board for white, it's still a draw.
Right.
But with material equality, it really should not be much of anything.
Yeah, I think we should stay with the Magnus games. I think Ding holds that every day of the week, including on a Sunday. And whether Hikaru manages to hold this one is an entirely different question. I feel as though...
I think the answer probably is no, but as mentioned, with the pawns now very firmly on the dark squares for black, it will require some work. It's not going to be just a conversion where you no longer have to think about a single decision for the rest of the game. But bishop e4, I was about to suggest playing bishop e4, forcing black to play g5, and then maybe taking, playing king g4, and then maybe shuttling the bishop over to g4 to start pushing the black king away from good squares.
I like that.
Also, something that we need to mention here is that h8 is a dark square. So if you give up your c pawn to distract the black king and then pick up both the pawn on g5 and the pawn on h4 after the f pawns get traded off, and Magnus hasn't taken on g5 yet, so it might be somewhat relevant here. And as you see, he is not intending maybe even to take on g5. But my point is, trading the c pawn for the entire king side might not win you the game. In fact, it probably won't win you the game, because black just needs to give up the bishop for the g-pawn, and the king, bishop, and the h-pawn does not win against the bare king for black if that king is already in the corner on h8. So that actually improves black's drawing prospects quite a bit here. But I suspect it's somewhat irrelevant, because Magnus is just not going to go for those plans. He's planning to just play bishop d5 check, ask black to choose a path for the king, and then his king will become a lot more active, and he ends up winning this without ever having to calculate those types of variations.
So you think it's winning? Like, I trust Magnus, but I don't have a clue, frankly.
I think it is simply because there is really no comfortable way of dealing with the bishop d5 check threat. And I think it's very clever that he's not taking on g5, because the one way to actually answer bishop d5 check would have been to play king f6. You probably still lose after that, but at least you stop the king from getting to the e5 square, which is a very pleasant square. And even after g4, we still go bishop d5 check. And now, once again, I think king f5, c6, the c-pawn just wins. And if you go back, we even have time enough to play king e4,
king e4, no? Yeah, take the pawn.
And then we can even, like, if we want, we can now even generate a second passer on the h-file. Once again, making very, very sure that we never give up the c-pawn for the bishop here, because that would be a bit of a mistake. But yeah, Hikaru gets his bishop to where it covers the g4 square, and in general, the black bishop is now kind of participating in the defense. But I suspect that, do I? I was about to say g3, hg, king takes, g3 should just be winning, but I'd be slightly worried doing that with white, because then you really can never play c6 anymore. And it might not be enough to win, actually. So as mentioned, this will still require some work from Magnus, but we do know he is very, very capable of doing this.
In the meantime, the other game, not surprisingly, Ding Liren against Alireza Firouzja, ended peacefully. This might not look like a very exciting game, and partly it does not look very exciting because it wasn't, but it is still somewhat surprising, to me at least, probably not to the rest of the world who's already understood how strong Alireza is, that he does not have a single problem dealing with the black pieces with Ding Liren, who's one of the hardest punchers in the world with white.
Yeah, Alireza is apart from very, very clearly being an incredibly gifted sharp player, which is, I think, normal for people his age. Like when a great new talent emerges, I think with like the most notable exception of Magnus himself, those kids start off by being unbelievably good at messy, sharp positions, and they pick up, technical skills on the go. And I think for a while yet, Alireza will be, his major strength will be he is an incredibly capable calculator, and also has very good imagination, and is very, very good in dynamic positions. But he's also clearly improving as a theoretician with like seemingly every passing day. So it's going to be very, very exciting to watch his progress.
And talking about progress, so we have an interesting development in the Magnus versus Hikaru game, because we have had an exchange of pawns, and we have one of those positions that Peter was talking about, where if black is able to give up the bishop for the c5 pawn, the position is a dead draw, theoretical draw. You can't queen a pawn when your bishop is on the wrong color square. The queen in square is the opposite color to your bishop. Basically, that is a theoretical draw. So all Hikaru needs to do now is give up the bishop for the pawn. But of course, Magnus and Hikaru both know that. You know that when you first start learning chess properly. And so what Magnus is going to try and do is find a way to keep that pawn alive and basically overstretch black and claim that he can't defend against both pawns simultaneously, and find the right moment to advance or deflect the bishop away from the defense of the c5 pawn running down the board.
Yeah, and Hikaru quite clearly does not allow king d5 d6 without without asking white to pay for it by pushing the h pawn one square further, which is, it doesn't sound like it's a big price to pay, but on h4 it was very, very difficult for the black king to actually get anywhere near that pawn. And if white is forced to play h5 somewhere, then this is a move which I don't understand. Okay, c6 f5 is what Hikaru is planning here. I thought he just kind of blundered the entire game in one move there, but Hikaru doesn't make mistakes like this in very short calculation, obviously. Because otherwise c6 would have won on the spot. So my point is, if white plays h5, then black starts running towards that h5 pawn, and most of the plans white might have to make progress on the queen side, they become a lot harder, because they will involve giving up on h5, and the clock for black will become much shorter. This should still be winning, I feel, though.
I don't know. You did probably explain that this is the quote-unquote wrong bishop for the h-pawn, so whenever black manages to give his bishop for the c-pawn, it's probably a draw.
And he did play c6, so after f5 he will now play something like bishop f3, I suppose, and just start pushing the h-pawn.
Look at this. C7, king d7.
No, that
has not been played.
That was I was showing.
That was on the
shocked. I was like, what's going on? What have I missed? Okay, that makes sense. So c6, f5, bishop f.
I'm still quite. This is a very sharp decision by Magnus, because now seemingly bishop b5 does make the draw we were describing. But Magnus's point quite clearly is, after c7, king d7, he can play h5. Just giving up on the c-pawn, because the h-pawn is now fast enough to queen without its friend on the c-file.
Yeah, that's
a very concrete solution to the issues Magnus has been facing, but it does appear to be correct. Yeah, bishop b5 played, and now c7 and king d7, h5, and even the threat of bishop take. He goes king e5 first. I'm slightly surprised by this, because I thought h5 was a very cute move to make, seemingly blundering the bishop, but it's not a blunder if the h-pawn queens, which it does. But I guess king e5
missed it.
No, I think he just knows king e5 is winning, so he doesn't really feel the urge to calculate. King takes e7, h5, and the same rules apply. The king is just too far away, and the bishop on its own doesn't hold that pawn.
h6, bishop g6.
Yeah, king f6, king f6, king g7 just wins.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, here h7, but after bishop h7, king g7. Yeah. So Hikaru goes with f4 and then runs with the bishop to g8. But now there has to be more than one way to wrap this up. I guess starting with bishop d5, bishop h7, bishop b4, bishop g8 cannot be a mistake, and this is what he does.
And boom, we have the players on screen. I can breathe in again. I was, hoping we would get that. Breathe out, I should say. So there we have Magnus and Hikaru, who are playing each other. So it's sort of a diagonal matchup over there. Magnus Carlsen, the Norwegian, with the blue jacket, and Hikaru with the gray sweater. How do you call that? Sweater vest? Lawrence, you're a fashionista.
Yeah, that's kind of I don't know what that is. Sweater, pullover, I don't know. Whatever it is, it ain't going to help him surviving this game. I guess the game will be over immediately.
Yeah, he resigns after king takes f4. Magnus decides not to even calculate any kind of pawn races. Takes on f4, and after king c7, the king just walks over to g7, and white wins, because it's too short of a diagonal for black to prevent h7 eventually. So a nice technical victory for Magnus in game one of their matchup against Hikaru.
Indeed. And when
Chapakapacha is saying diagonal matchup, question mark. Can you switch it to be one on top of the other? That's what I was hinting at. I'm sure that thought crossed our minds as well. We will see if we can adjust those. I'm not sure if it's so easy. But yeah, Thanks for the point. The world champion wins his first game against Hikaru Nakamura. He must have been itching to play another chess game ever since he lost to Alireza. Looked smooth, didn't it?
Yeah, it did look like he was in control throughout, and a nice opening choice. I guess is fair to describe. I think he got exactly what he wanted out of the opening. Hikaru did not seem that upset early on, but I think.
And yes, sort of what I was a bit surprised by Hikaru's choice, because it means suffering. Like, even if you equalize in a perfect world, but to give up that space so early. And this game, I don't think will convince people otherwise. It was all, standard stuff. Hikaru tried to free himself with his e5, but he never really got full equality. This bishop was a problem, so it looked one-way traffic to me.
Yeah, it seemed like, in particular, once black pushed e5 and white found the precise reply to it, Hikaru never really could get back into the game, and as is often the case, Magnus's conversion skills are second to none right now.
Pretty good.
Yep.
There will be about a 10-minute break after the games have finished. That goes for every game. So let's say the Ding Firouzja game is over. I'm not sure if that's true. There will be roughly a 10-minute interruption after the games are over. I think the players prefer it if the games start bang, 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 right, one after another, right, Peter? So you stay in the rhythm. But of course, there's also other considerations with the tens of people watching us at home. So there will be a small break after every one of the games, around 10 minutes.
Will they be synchronized, or will they be playing sort of their own matches with the game starting 10 minutes after their game finished?
That's why I corrected myself mid-sentence, because I wasn't 100% sure. I was told that there will be a 10-minute break after every game, but then I was wondering if, the TV guys, they probably wanted that the games start at the same time, right? So I wasn't 100% sure.
I suspect.
I'm very curious to see in the next game, like, what has been worked out there. Because I know that Magnus, and frankly most top players, they feel strongly about, let's get the games played one after another.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the reality.
I think that's an absolute universal opinion. The smaller the break, the better, because it interrupts your flow, and you just sat there doing not very much, and there cannot really be any meaningful preparation in the 10 minutes you have between games. So you'd much rather the game started as early as humanly possible. But obviously, as Jan mentioned, there are things to think about when taking those decisions.
It seems like after game one, there is a 10-minute break. I'm talking about the single games now, and then they play game two. And then for game three, they sync up again, if that makes any sense. So I would expect, if I understood this correctly, to have the Ding versus Alireza game start earlier now than the Magnus game, and then they sync up again for game three, if I understood this right. So complicated.
Well, the good news is we have all of this time to shamelessly plug the wonderful deals that we have ongoing for you guys. We've got tens of thousands of people watching this right now, maybe for the first time getting seriously interested in chess. Well, Christmas has come early. We have got some big offers on at Chess24 we can let you know about right now. First and foremost, 40% off a premium membership. I would get that if I were you. Huge saving, and you get access as a premium member to all the wonderful features on chess24.com, including hundreds of hours, that's not an exaggeration, hundreds of hours of training video series by the likes of Jan Gustafsson, Peter Svidler, Magnus Carlsen, Mark Dvoretsky, Artur Yusupov, and so on and so forth. Even I have produced the odd video series for your pleasure and improvement, only available to premium users. So get yourselves a premium membership and use the code, the special promo code, stay at home, 40% off, massive discount. On top of that, we have got the fantasy chess contest running every day There's a daily contest and there's an overall contest. If you become a premium member, you can actually win an what's it called, Jan? An iWatch? An Apple Watch? An Apple Watch, isn't it? Yes, an Apple Watch Series 5. Jan Gustafsson, one of the most sort of modern, hip people you'll ever meet, has only got a Series 4. You're actually able to get your hands on the Series 5 if you win the Fantasy Chess Tournament Contest. Shout out to my main man, Mr. Gregory, what's his name? I keep on forgetting his name. Yeah,
Don't do that. That's just plain rude.
Plain rude. Greg Shahadi, I know you're watching, buddy. Thank you so much for your efforts again in creating this fantastic fantasy contest. If you become a premium member, you can win better prizes at Fantasy. It really is a no-brainer. And on top of that, the absolutely special promo that we have for you guys is that the Magnus Carlsen Trainer app, which is on Android or on Apple, is available free of charge for the entire tournament. That's right, free. That means you don't have to pay a single penny to become a better chess player. Go and download the app.
Is that as good as it gets, or is there a chance that they will start paying us for using the app? Because if not, I'll do the free.
Yeah, I'm going to get my free version as well. chess24.com/trainer for that. If you want to know more about fantasy, chess24.com/MCI fantasy. Is that right? I believe that is right. That's confusing. Can't we just have fantasy like we normally did? I mean, so many letters. Confusing.
It is a privilege to see you reading at work.
I can't read. I'm not even reading it. I'm just I'm ad-libbing. It's ridiculous. I'm like, because I can't see the advert.
That's somehow even more alarming. And also, the longer this goes on, I thought of a sentence: play fantasy games, win fantastic prizes. And I've been waiting for a chance to use it, and you were just going on and on and on, and now that the punchline is just completely stale.
Anyway, you should really be getting involved in that stuff, guys, during these breaks, because honestly, some really great deals there. So what have we got next?
Same people playing each other with colors reversed is what we got next.
We do, indeed.
Hopefully in the next few minutes.
Nakamura with the white pieces against Magnus Carlsen, and Alireza Firouzja gets the white pieces against Ding Liren. So these matches are 4 games. And then if you have 2.5 points or more, you win the match. If you have 1.5 or less, you lose the match. If you have 2, you have to play an Armageddon game. This is what we call it in chess. Lawrence, what would you call in Armageddon? What would you compare an Armageddon game in chess with? Is it like sudden dash dodgeball? Like, what's the pop culture reference there?
Yeah, I don't really know. That's a good question, actually. Can you compare it to something in tennis where you get to serve in these tie breaks?
Could be like tennis tie breaks or
yeah,
football penalty kicks. It's a shorter time control. White gets 5 minutes, black gets 4 minutes. White has to win the game. Black gets draw odds. So if black draws, he wins the match. If white wins, he wins the match.
And an important note: despite 2.5 obviously winning you the round, we still get to see all 4 games, right?
I would expect so. No one can leave with 2.5 half.
Yeah. So we're always
California.
We are always guaranteed at least 8 games per day, and possibly more if something ends in a 2-2 draw.
Speaking of 8 games per day, let's jump into game number 3 of the day. Alireza Firouzja with the white pieces against Ding Liren. It's a Najdorf. E4, C5, knight C3, D6.
This is some kind of a brave new world, because Ding Liren, and we touched briefly on that topic in our commentary for the first game. Ding Liren is arguably maybe the top player with the most stable repertoire, and that stable repertoire has not really included Najdorf up until today, I would say.
He listened to me. I was calling him out for, looking a little stale in the candidates, not just playing the Marshall, which of course is a great opening, but also sticking to lines he had played before, not, being flexible. a little predictable. And here he comes with a Najdorf. This doesn't feel like a bluff from Ding. No, you wouldn't bluff against Alireza with such a complex opening.
No, it's probably something that he's been meaning to start including more and more as time goes on, but perhaps did not want to try it out in the candidates. Being in the candidates, you need to consider all kinds of things when settling on opening choices. And the fact that the candidates tournament featured two people who play the Najdorf as a matter of course, those two people being Jan Nepomniachtchi and MVL, both of whom we will see in this event as well. That would mean that you're playing against the field which would, by necessity, prepare against the Najdorf if they were planning to play 1e4. So my guess is maybe Ding Liren felt that the candidates was not the right time to start playing this, but now that there is this event where you can a lot safer practice new things.
So the Najdorf is move a6 here, which is pretty much the only move they play at the highest level. e6, the Scheveningen has fallen out of favor because of g4. And the dragon has its supporters. I love the dragon, but it's not an opening that we will see regularly among these guys. White has like 8 million choices here. Bishop e3, bishop g5, f3, f4, g3, h3, h4, bishop d2, bishop e2, bishop d3, bishop c4, a3, a4, rook g1, knight b3, queen e2, queen f3, queen d3 are the first ones that come to mind. All of those are serious lines.
And some more serious than the others, but it really is no joke. But White basically by this point touched every single piece on the board. And there has been a bit of a discussion on Twitter of the move bishop f4, which apparently, shout out to Mike McDonald, is gaining popularity in online circles, blundering a piece on move 6. But we're not going to be seeing that in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational.
Nope, that's unlikely. So they are playing one of these sharp lines of the so-called English attack, because people like Lawrence, hackers from Essex, they said, who cares about all this subtle maneuvering, weak square, blah, blah, blah. Well, what we want to do is castle queenside and shove our pawn, our g-pawn up the board. And then Black reacted. They said, you know what? I don't want you to put this g-pawn all up in my grill. And they started playing pawn to h5, stopping White from going g4. And that's modern chess for you now. People are, discussing the subtleties. Maybe h5 weaken your king a little bit if you castle kingside. That maybe it's hard for me to get an h3 because you play h4 and I can't go g4. So maybe I'll switch to f4 or some other plan. I don't like chess. King b1, b5 played.
Yeah.
Alireza thinking.
Yeah, this is a position which I think when they started playing the h5 lines against the bishop e3 Najdorf, there was the fallback position for White. People still felt that the weakening of the Black king side will outweigh the fact that your normal source of play here for White has been more or less stopped dead in its tracks. But it's not been the topic of discussion very much recently against h5. I think people have been playing the knight d5 lines a lot more. So I'm very interested in Alireza opting for this setup and playing a3 here reasonably quickly as well, which is not a move I've seen in this exact position, although you see it more and more in all kinds of Sicilians.
Alireza, by the way, show your face. What's going on there? He's so focused. He's merging with the screen. But it is great that we can see all the players now. Ding probably chatting it up there as usual. Magnus doing Magnus things, leaning back. Hikaru looks focused. Some red flags there in the background. So this is great. Let's switch to Magnus maybe. This is an opening I know. In the business, there is a big debate here. What you call this line? Peter, b5, bishop c5. What's your take?
I think we have been very strongly advised that this has to be now called the Yurtayev. And I'm not really against that idea. I think players like Yurtayev, players who have done a lot for the development of certain lines, but who are somewhat lesser known in terms of their overall chess career. It's nice when they get the recognition they deserve. And I think the main debate, if this is still the Arkhangelsk, right?
There's always the Arkhangelsk pops up. Like the Möller is sometimes used, even though I think the Möller technically you call this move. Anyway, it's a very aggressive way to meet the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish 3 bishop b5. And we've seen Fabiano Caruana adopted recently in the candidates tournament. So it's interesting that Magnus says, you know, if it's good enough for Fabi, it's good enough for me. I will play it myself, maybe also to annoy Fabi, to show him, you know what, you stole my Sveshnikov, I will steal your Tayev.
I'll steal your Tayev.
I was sure your finely tuned comedic sense would come up with a punchline about as good as the one you came up with.
By the way,
yeah, and this reply to the Yurtayev is, I think, taking us all the way back to how they were trying to refute that line when it first appeared on the scene. I would say, let's say in the mid-90s, and people like Shirov started playing this a lot with the black pieces. The idea of going a4 and just taking on e5 and.
Shall we briefly go through this? So first of all, it's relevant. White does not go A, but leaves this for later. And he takes here, giving a piece, but he does take it back after takes in d4. The big alternative is to play with c3 and d4, etc. here.
Oh, and like if we're going to talk about alternatives and what to do, I don't know about you, but I'm a premium member, and Peter Svidler did a very, very long course on this for Chess24. So, you know.
Just queen takes d4,
throwing that
e6, and f4 played, which is the old main line, but there are other moves here. I think bishop f4 they've experimented with, f3 they've experimented with. So f4 is very direct, but last time I checked was not supposed to be too scary.
There's supposed to be a reasonably comfortable equality for black. So I'm very curious as to what Hikaru has prepared here. Knight c6, knight e7 is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, queen c3, queen d3 is also moved, but queen c3, knight e7.
Queen d3 exists, but well, this is very much the way people were trying to refute it from the very beginning. e5, knight e4 is a very typical move here. Obviously, black does not want to open the f file too early because that would justify much of what white has been trying to do here. And queen e1 here is a move that has been played, I think, recently in a high-profile game, which I am now weirdly failing to remember who it featured. But queen f3 is a move I don't remember as well. I'm sure it exists, but I thought queen e1 was the main try here.
Yeah. Also, instead of e5, there are other tries as well, like f5 had its moment of fame and so on. But yeah, this, I agree with you. Queen f3 does not look that common, but Hikaru must have something in mind. Knight c5, bishop a2, castles, bishop e3. So both sides concluding their development. White is the two bishops. Black can probably go bishop e6 if he wants to exchange that guy. What do we do here? Knight f5 first, bishop e6, or
there's a lot of
options.
E7? A lot of options you can argue for, but Magnus quite quickly, and it seems like he has not been surprised by queen f3 one beat. He goes bishop b7, and then returns the knight back to e4, which is a very nice square where, with the pawn already leaving f2, it's very difficult to challenge it with, or impossible to challenge it with f3. So it has a reasonably safe haven. And Hikaru just trades it for the b1 knight, which looks logical, but also spoils his structure. So it's a committal decision in a way.
Yeah,
knight c3, knight c3, bc. And now we have a position which is kind of typical to this line, where black might even be better if he survives the next, let's say, 5 to 10 moves. But surviving the next 5 to 10 moves is not a given, because yeah, if you allow f5, f6, you get mated.
Yeah, you're dreaming of putting your pawn on c4. That's why I drew this stupid arrow, but it's a little too slow.
it probably is not going to be fast enough. And Magnus quite quickly once again plays bishop d5 here, very understandably hoping to trade off the bishop on a2, which was, of the two bishops white has, it probably is the more threatening one. You probably still play a5 here. You need to hurry. If you don't play quickly here, if you just switch to kind of normal mode and allow Black to trade on a2, play d, play queen d5, white's position will be kind of in ruins. So I think you actually still play a5, bishop a2, rook a2, d, f6, and call. This gets you somewhere.
Getting Twitch screaming echo, which is never good.
Especially German rapper Echo Fresh.
They're going completely bonkers in Twitch. So can we try and whoever?
And if I gather the feedback correctly, then people are unhappy with the echo.
So yeah,
what we do?
Generally unhappy with the echo. So we're going to fix that. Should we shut up until that's been fixed? Because I guess that is...
I'm not saying a word anymore.
Yeah.
Whose echo is it?
Yeah. Be more constructive with your feedback.
Don't say that. I'm scared.
Well, I mean, if there ever was a time to use that line, it is now. And the other game of the round is also blowing up because having made that slightly quiet move a2 and a3, Alireza spent the next few moves, achieving things in the center. And the position they have currently is extremely double-edged, and sometimes white will give mate on queens on the king side, and sometimes his center will get completely blown up, and he will lose.
Yeah, he did this a3, hinting at g4, not sure was a threat, h4 played, and now he switches to f4, castles f5.
It's somewhat curious that Ding just very quickly castles in this position without any consideration for something slower. You don't necessarily need to castle this early. The king is reasonably safe on e8 in these types of positions, and you do castle sort of into the storm there, because white now very clearly wants to play something like g3, h takes, g rook, g1, and if the g file does get opened, the mating attack we keep on hinting at is actually very much a reality.
Do you think it's Ding's lack of experience in these things that he castles into it so quickly? Because he's not a knight-off player, as we discussed.
Maybe he just knows. It's very possible that he's looked at this, but I would at least consider playing queen c7 first, and asking how you're intending to proceed here. This is generally just a very typical plan in these types of positions. In particular, once white goes f3, f4, queen c7, and then queen b7, and start asking some slightly awkward questions about the e4 pawn. But I think Ding had something concrete in mind. His next move, I think, is very much an indication of that, because instead of bishop c4, which is very much the norm in these types of positions, he takes on b3, which maybe hints at some exchange sacrifices.
That's what I was wondering. Do you take here? No, he's blitzed out knight to c5.
He played knight c5, so he is not really of the opinion that he needs to go kind of all in on the
double
exchange
attack.
sacrifice.
You can take it though.
Yeah, I think it kind of forces bishop takes c5, which is why he went for this position, because there is bishop d3. The pawn on b3 is important, but I don't know how important. But I think maybe even more relevantly, if you play bishop d3 here, you relinquish control over the d5 square, and black might be very happily playing d6, d5 instantly in reply. So maybe Ding just feels that if this forces bishop takes c5, he cannot be doing all that poorly. I don't know if I agree with that, though. I think it might be a very...
Bishop takes c5, d takes c5, I guess.
First of all, yeah, I'm not sure what you recapture with.
Yeah, because rook takes c5 is white going to just play b4 there?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, and then it will very much revolve around the question: can White get the bishop from f1 to b3 or not?
yes,
Because if he can, the game will end pretty much in a White victory, and if he cannot, then
he took with the
maybe
deep
not.
pawn.
No, this has happened. Bishop c5,
Yeah.
d c5.
And now it's once again it becomes very concrete. How do we reply to queen e1, for instance?
Guys, all of this is fascinating, but not as fascinating as Nakamura
Oh
trying to
my
checkmate
goodness.
Magnus Carlsen. So, with all very, very due respect to Alireza, we'll have to come back to that.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. And as expected, f5 and f6 has been played. We did mention that this was extremely likely. And I'm slightly surprised. I honestly thought Magnus will go knight g6 in that previous position, but
Here?
no,
Or after
f6, f6 knight g6. But maybe bishop h6 is quite strong. No, queen d5 probably solves that problem. Yeah, that would be bad, but we play queen d5, and we continue just giving up this pawn on g7. I think in most cases, but Magnus is just unafraid. He says, "I will open the g file for you, Hikaru, because my knight will land on g6 eventually." And it is such a sturdy piece that nothing bad will happen to my king on g8. So
he takes bishop h6. He's not very generous with his exchanges, especially now that the Norwegian krona is in trouble. So he goes rook to e8 and keeps his rook. In chess, we call an exchange of a rook for a bishop or a knight an exchange, which is very strange, I admit. That's what it's called. Rook e8 played. Rook a6. Wow. Board vision. Rook b6.
I think that's very sensible by Hikaru. That rook on a2 wasn't really doing very much, so swapping it off whilst also spoiling the black structure in the process is very good. And now he goes queen g3 check and h4, and
exactly.
Yeah, and it
So
feels
winning
like
a piece?
it feels like it's not mate, but the knight on g6 might be a goner.
Can we go f5?
h5 h5 queen h4. That's very good. Even though the knight probably still ends up being lost, right? Takes bishop g5.
Oh wow.
Or g3. I don't know which one is stronger.
G3, yeah.
Oh, he goes. Whoa.
He played h4 a5 h5 f4 and h takes g6.
Oh baby, that's good.
Bold strategy, Cotton.
Yeah, that's a very, very beautiful little tactical shot from Hikaru there. I don't know if Magnus missed this from some ways off, because his position, I'm not even sure it's that horrible. But fg3 is completely impossible, as Jan was about to show you. fg3 loses on the spot to the Excelsior.
By the way, I should explain something, because this has been a very understandable complaint. But here, for example, currently we have a position that was played in the game on the board, right? So you see this green little traffic light now, hopefully on your screen above the players' heads. Now, if I make a move that has not been played in the game, like f takes g3, this green light changes to blue. I'm not sure why it's no longer red, but we'll go with the blue. So blue means analysis. Green means actual game position. I hope that helps in clarifying, because sometimes we move the pieces around. So this would be bad because of takes and f8 or f takes e8, I guess.
Yeah, you don't need to get very fancy here. Yeah,
and white wins.
Yeah, that is completely lost. But Magnus obviously has the option, which he's already exercised, of taking on g6 with the h pawn, and he now has 3 pawns for the piece.
Not too bad, maybe. No, if he doesn't get checkmated.
No, I think it's playable, but yeah, not getting checkmated is the important bit here, and it's not a given. I think the biggest advantage, it will sound completely stupid, but the biggest advantage the side with an extra piece normally has in positions like this is that he has more pieces. And I did warn you, it will sound very stupid, but there's an underlying point I want to make, is that if this becomes an endgame, if you imagine the same position with queens coming off and the black king being completely safe, the number of pawns black has becomes quite relevant. But if white somehow manages to mount some kind of an attack against the black king, the pawns don't really matter that much. What does matter is that white has 3 attackers against the black king, and black only really has 2 defenders. So Hikaru, I think, is very, very interested in keeping the queens on here for as long as possible. And conversely, Magnus, I think, might be very interested in the idea of playing queen c8, as I was finishing that second sentence. The move appeared on the board. Yeah, we are going to be, as black, very, very much looking to get those queens off the board ASAP. I guess queen h4 is what we reply with.
So queen h4 with the idea bishop g5, bishop f6, obviously. And
not queen f6, queen g7?
Also, but I was thinking maybe
double whammy.
5 check, king h2.
No, queen f6 does win on the spot if it's allowed. So something like queen f5 probably is the move, or queen e6, because if you play queen f5, I think rook d1, d6 might be quite awkward to meet, re-establishing the threat of bishop g5, f6. This is very, very exciting because I think Hikaru has a very decent chance of striking back immediately. I wouldn't want to, slap an evaluation on this position without having to think about it for a bit. But it's definitely quite dangerous for black because of how unstable his king position remains.
How does he survive? Sorry, queen. So queen
well,
f5.
Queen f5 or queen e6.
Bishop, so queen f5, bishop g5. I don't understand.
King g7.
Have you got some g4 there?
Maybe, yeah. This is why I'm worried. Well, now I go queen e6, and as long as I control the f6 square, I'm not going to get mated as such. And Magnus goes with queen c5 check, which is a move we did not discuss very much because, like in my case, I just couldn't really understand what we're trying to achieve by playing this. I don't think we want queen e7 because it kind of forces white to make the bishop g5 move he badly wants to make anyway. So it surprises me a little bit that this is what Magnus went with.
Sounds like he's in trouble, no? If I'm understanding chat right, they're also saying he's lost.
Yeah, it does feel like this position could just be bad, not slightly worse, just flat out bad. You have to play queen d6 now, I guess.
Bishop
and
G5,
I was
six.
Bishop g5, king g7 once again, I guess, because rook e6, rook a1. I think the problem with leaving the rook off the 8th file of the 8th rank is white instantly creates a huge threat by putting his own rook on an available open file, and there.
In all of these lines, Peter, aren't we just going queen h6, rook f3, rook h3?
Yeah, I think we are. I think that just wins right here probably.
And actually, we e4, rook h3, f3, check g3 important. There, queen d2 doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Actually control.
That's probably, well, it's not mate, but it wins. Yeah, because you do have the queen e5 move here, but it loses the rook to 3 checks.
Right, exactly.
Queen d6 played, and it appears as if there's not going to be a particularly good reply to bishop g5, rook f3, and Hikaru blitzes out bishop g5, unsurprisingly. And I want to bring your attention, guys, to something that Lawrence brought up in the pre-show. This is now move 34, and they both have 8 minutes left.
Exactly.
So it's if you assume that like the median length of a game is around 40 moves, they've gotten almost all the way there. There's a lot of things that already happened which maybe were not entirely forced, and they've barely used half the available time.
Yeah.
So I think kind of adjusting to this not being blitz might be a real thing.
Also, everyone's at home, and we know chess players when they're at home. At the very least, guys like Magnus and Hikaru, they play a lot of blitz games. And having this steady diet of blitz bullet games might make it tough for them to switch to 15-10 as opposed to if they were coming off a classical tournament. But yeah, Magnus blitzed into this way too quickly, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you should not have 7 minutes here as black. I think it's fine if you got here with 8.5 with white because you appear to be winning. So who cares how much time you spent? But you should not be in the situation with 7.5 minutes on the clock as black. Because I'm pretty sure there were some decisions along the way which deserved deserve the pause.
Yeah, agreed. Think it's going to be tough to make this adjustment, actually, to actually having to spend some minutes. Let's look at the other game.
Speaking of spending some minutes, we have a fashionable late entry. I'm not sure if you guys can hear him yet, but we can see him from Moscow, Russia. Super Grandmaster.
We need to
phenom.
Unmute him
Alexander
as soon as possible.
is joining us.
Wow.
Alexander, how are you today?
Yeah, hi Jan, hi Lawrence, hi Peter. Congratulations with your victory.
Thank you.
And hello all the chess viewers. Okay, very interesting games today. I think so far all games, all 4 games are interesting so far.
So you
even the Ding Firouzja game you thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Black got slightly better position out of the opening against Ding. It's already interesting. Then I guess, yeah, he played very safe, but because I think Black was slightly better. I think he could try to achieve something.
Right. We're talking about the last game that ended in a draw. What's your take on the games going on now? Nakamura is winning against Carlsen?
Yeah, just totally winning. Because, you know, when I comment, I don't look engine, but when I just observe, I look what engine says that it's +6. So, you know, very easy to evaluate for me.
+6 is conclusive here, yeah.
And I wanted to show one thing in their first game of Magnus Nakamura. I think it was sort of instructive.
All right.
After they exchanged the queens, so move 36. Actually, Magnus was almost winning before, but here after rook e7, and also I think it's the most natural move, but engine confirmed that bishop c8 is almost a draw. Bishop takes e6, check, bishop e6. And then you are either in time to play h4 or just to take the c5 pawn. And it's just pretty much a draw.
Oh.
Yeah, we missed that in the live show because I think Hikaru responded so quickly that we never really had any time to.
Yeah, it's like bishop h6 is the most natural move for bullet because when you go, you know, you don't want to go backwards, but once you think about the position for, I don't know, 3 seconds, you realize that your bishop belongs to e6 and definitely not c4. So bishop c8 is, you know, the shortest route to e6.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Well, we do have a result, and Magnus has resigned.
No, checkmate.
That's an actual checkmate on the board, which
Yes.
is one of the questions in today's fantasy. Actually, I think.
I went with yes.
I think I also took yes in there, so I'm raking in the points.
Rich.
Love to see it. And by the way, guys, you know,
checkmate.
Magnus got up in quite a huff there, I have to say. He wasn't happy at all getting up there. I think he's probably going to be a bit angry with himself for using so little time, as you said, Peter, to get in that position and only use 7 minutes, less than half your time, I think is actually not very good from him.
Yeah, I don't know if that will be like the main focus of his unhappiness, because he generally just hates playing poorly, and time management might not be, you know, as high on the list there as other things. But yeah, he clearly will be extremely unhappy with this effort, and understandably so.
But we've got some real action in the Alireza versus game.
Yeah,
go straight there.
Yeah, Ding has the option of this exchange sacrifice with e5, e4 here, which I don't know if it's any good, but it's attractive, like aesthetically, but it might not be fast enough. You might still be getting mated. He's played it. That's interesting, because I was just trying to calculate. We take the rook, and after ef3 we go queen g4, because I think it's very, very important to stop queen e4 check. But I guess he goes queen d5. Because if you give white time to play h6, hg, you just get mated on the spot. So you have to create a threat every move here with black. But queen d5 does create a very important threat here. So maybe he is in time.
But even cd4, h6, queen d5.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, we still have one move left.
And rook d3, rook c3 always. So
yeah, even f2 could be thrown in, but rook c3 is quite good as well. Yeah. So this is now extremely sharp and requires very concrete play.
And interestingly, if I've got the times right here, Alireza actually down to a minute.
Mm-hmm. But they did I think start slightly earlier than the other game, because they finished the previous game slightly earlier than the other game, so it's understandable.
It's still very difficult to calculate.
Queen g4 played, and if you go, yeah, c takes d4 is very much a move here, because I thought maybe rook h1 was strong, but then rook c3, of course. Because if white could pick up the pawn on f3, then he could safely switch back to giving mate on the other side of the board. But
and if c takes d4, rook d3, you want to go f2? Is that the idea?
I think we are throwing in f2 here at the earliest opportune moment, because it distracts white. I don't know. Even the endgame might not be horrible, but
you win a3 and it's probably
Also, immediate rook c3 here might be a move you could consider.
Well, this
queen takes d4, I suppose. It's time to stabilize with white. f2, rook f1, queen g2. Yeah, I might be losing here.
Wow,
it's very. Are you, sir?
Very easy to imagine actually losing this position with white. I think rook f1 is just a large blunder. Although, do I lose rook takes f2? Rook takes d3 wins. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So maybe against the instead of rook f1, which is seemingly the most obvious move in the position, we actually have to play rook d1, where it doesn't hang. And yeah, I don't really know what this is. I suspect black is fine, but it's a very confusing position. I think we take on d3, take on a3, and say, you know, I have pawns for the exchange, and the pawn on f2 is still alive, and I'm not that bothered.
Alexander, awful hangover in the chat is saying, I would like to have some beers with Grishuk. He seems cool. There you go. Found a drinking buddy already.
Yeah, I mean, but very interesting game in the process. And also Dink is catching up on time. He's also getting into time trouble, which he tries to avoid usually. So it's very interesting game going on. So no time for beers or for fun.
What do you mean? What do you mean no time for fun? This is fun. But I have to say I feel very, very sad for awful hangover. Such a cold way to say no to a beer.
I've seen people get rejected painfully, but to use the chess is too interesting excuse like that must hurt.
Yeah, this really is. You know you have no shot.
25 played. Rook
d3, c4.
Wow, that's explosive.
This is interesting because the issue with this is that c takes b3 creates but we are also not creating a threat of a check. Can we play h6 here? H6? No.
What if rook take f3?
cb?
f6?
I thought queen c4 maybe. But hang on a second. What's the reply to queen takes f3 right now?
No, just queen somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, queen d6 or something. You have to establish a threat against the a3 pawn. And also, the moment the queen leaves the g4 square, our threats on the king side become slightly less concrete. Yeah, still a very, very sharp position.
Why do I get the feeling that after queen takes f3, white stabilizes just a little, quite nicely somehow? I don't know.
Well,
it's called intuition.
This is what Alireza played on queen d6, blitzed out in reply by Ding, and it's actually not that easy to make a move in this position.
Well, rook somewhere, I would.
Maybe rook c3, and after queen takes a3, maybe I finally have time to play h6. But
Oh, yeah.
whoa, b takes c4. That's a brave choice. But I guess he is
Oof,
confident the king will be safe enough somewhere around a2.
really?
I don't know if I agree with this necessarily.
Queen
Takes
d4, maybe
d4.
he just wants to switch to defense, like rook hc1,
Mhm.
to ensure the a2 square, to that no queen d2 check is
Mhm.
dead.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the bishop on f8 is still some way away from the good squares.
But now black is definitely fine.
Yeah, like
He
bishop
had
bishop
take
e7.
a3, bishop take a3.
Wow, bishop a3 is a smarter move. Yeah.
Oops. Wow. And rook b8 check and it's mate.
Yeah,
This
may
did
have
not
been.
happen, just to show the idea.
Yeah, this may have been missed. And actually, after bishop a3, I suspect
Is
black
that
is maybe much better close to winning, and he does play
Happened.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
Rook 1 c2 played, but now after bishop b4, you really have no squares for your pieces. Like you might have to play like rook b3 or rook d3 or something like that, and that's a very uncomfortable position to find yourself in suddenly. You might also be losing.
Bishop e7 even, or whatever.
Yeah, just going all the way back is always an attractive proposition. because
Also
if it-
maybe check and queen g1 just wins immediately. No?
king takes.
Ah. Oh.
That's
Well, I mean, out of necessity, I don't claim much credit. Everything else probably does allow mate. He played bishop e7, queen b7 played by Alireza. This is why I was kind of hesitant to suggest, queen d8 is smart. I did not see queen d8. Queen d8 is a very smart move here.
A wise man once said, queen retreats are the easiest to miss in chess.
Rook d2 exists as a reply. I guess if you don't play rook d2, you kind of are in very dire straits. But after rook d2, there's probably some kind of a solution anyway.
Queen 8 or what? Because
I think
this is check.
Very big problem is maybe even queen takes d2 wins. This is my issue.
Rook d2 on the board.
what?
Yeah, I mean,
so
Alireza
if you
was-
went rook d3 with the same idea, because maybe then you don't get.
Oh yeah, but Dingler not interested in trading the rooks yet. Goes queen f8.
No, but now
And-
king c2, yes, it's not so clear.
Bishop f6.
You can
I
start.
think
All
this
of this
probably
happened.
this falls apart. Yeah, once the bishop lands on f6, this has to be falling
Okay.
apart for white.
Okay, so
And
rook f3.
no, he played rook g7, and it's you can see why he realizes,
Oh,
I think,
wow.
correctly that he cannot hold this position quietly. But now I think rook b8 followed by queen b4 is probably something like mate in 10 or something. Because
Rook b8 played. This looks
Wow.
over.
yeah, I don't think white ever holds positions like this.
Can you go rook b2 check? Probably not.
Yeah. He even took on c3. He is a pragmatic player. I would not have given up that bishop for anything. But he is a.
What kind of giant screen does Ding have in front of him? By the way, it's bigger than him.
Yeah, that looks like it's larger than 17-inch, right? That doesn't feel like it's 17
Looks like
inches.
47
Jan would
inch.
know. Being an expert in technology.
Your first joke of the day. Congratulations.
Yes.
No, sorry. I had to get it in while I could. That's what she said.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, you have to listen to this, Sasha.
Yeah.
This is why, yeah. So king c5 on the board, and it's
After rook b5, I think you're.
Even you can play queen g2, queen d5, queen e5 check.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
queen e5.
I think it's okay to resign somewhere around here. I'm also, Peter Svidler suggests resigning before resigning happens should be on the bingo card somehow. But yeah, king c4.
Oof.
I guess there has to be some kind of forced mate, but you don't even need to look for it. I guess rook b4, queen c3, and then some forced mate. But just going queen c2 and taking on f5, I think, is the most dispiriting way of. He even
goes
took
for
on
the
c7.
endgame. That's cold.
that is genuinely cold by Ding. But yeah,
But it forces resignation, so it was best.
Yeah, ensures immediate resignation. So clearly best choice.
Ding
Yeah,
Liren
that's
wins his first
not
game
probably
and
played.
disappears.
Yeah,
I mean, the final position.
convincing victory somehow for Ding. I mean,
Yeah,
he
and I
went to
think
the storm.
I think if you tell the people this is a game between Ding and Alireza, and you don't tell the people what the colors were, I think the assumption will be that this is a Ding Alireza game. First of all,
This
because of
looked
the
like a
opening choice.
Geary MVL game.
Yeah, but once again, going back to the point that I think this field is still perfectly okay against Alireza. That is not to say that him losing one game in a row is, as the joke was during the Vike tournament, he's past it way to time for him to retire. Obviously, none of that, but I think naming him second favorite for this field was.
Yeah, that's what I thought was strange. Of course, he belongs and he's shown he can play with everybody and he's tremendously exciting and so on. But to expect him to just crush Ding, it's the number 3 in the world who beat Magnus Carlsen in the St. Louis tiebreaks.
Indeed. And we're going to have a small break, obviously. So there's a lot of blood so far on the board. 3 decisive results.
Yeah, 3 decisive games out of 4, which makes me kind of worry for my... I took a very, very conservative line on the question of how many draws there will be out of 124 rapid games played. And if this is the new standard, my answer on that question feels like I'm off by an order of magnitude. But
does anybody know statistics? How many rapid games are usually drawn at a high level? I went with like 25%, but I didn't look it up. So it was
no, I went significantly higher than that, and it feels stupid. And right now, I look at this and I think
around 50. No,
that much, huh? Wow.
No, I went with slightly under 50. I went with like something like 45%, and it felt to me that generally, yes, there's a lot of blood being spilled, but this is a 2750 plus field with people still playing their normal openings. And in my mind,
I mean, Ding playing with Najdorf.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. I have to say,
Yeah.
I did not see that coming.
Also, I think players are not taking it 100% seriously yet. I mean, it's online and so on. It's just somewhat to have fun. But of course, when the tournament progresses, after you lose a match or 2, you start to play 100%. You want to win back, I mean, for example, that's what happens to me in a lot of these tournaments, which are not, not official, just some kind of tournament. I come here, I see nice starting fee or, nice last place money. So I come, start to have fun, start, losing 2 or 3 games, and then I'm trying to focus finally, because it's like me just being stupid and others taking it seriously from the get-go. And here, yeah, it looks like still they are not taking it 100% seriously, at least some of them.
I don't know. I think, yeah, the big talking point, I don't think, let's say Alireza losing this game is him not taking it seriously. It's maybe just he overestimated how good his position was at some point. But I was very curious, like, to me, it was very striking how quickly Magnus played in that game that he lost.
Also, where did he go wrong? Do we know, Sasha? You were checking with Engine, or do you know this line?
I think F6 Engine was given knight d5, and black is fine.
Here, F6 knight d5. Okay.
FG rook e8.
Okay, so a version of what we were discussing on air. I was also saying that. Inviting FG7 was, but I was trying to play knight g6 instead, which I assume is just weaker for some reason.
But it's just a browser engine, so it can be.
Yeah, but still, these positions, they're quite reliable, even at depth 20 or whatever, no?
Yeah, it very rarely says things which are completely wrong. Yeah.
Interesting. So the score is 1-1.
No, but I just briefly, returning to this. So that position after GF is already quite poor for black. So he did not miss anything. Like after H4, he's already in trouble.
After bishop H6 +1.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure about that at all. It didn't seem to me like it was obvious that there was no way out for black.
So that's not part of your video series, this position.
Somehow it's, I think I'm giving something else after Queen F3, but I have no idea what. It's been too long. There's a zero chance I can remember what my file says here. I think I'm giving some kind of bishop e6 ideas, but I can actually check. I mean, one advantage of doing this from home is that I have a second computer on which I can cheat slightly and check my own notes.
Not allowed for the players. For commentators, will
not allowed for the players, but we do have the luxury. We do have the luxury of.
So do they play a game at how to say? Let's say 5 o'clock straight, 6 o'clock straight, just one game per hour?
The way I understood it is there's a 10-minute break after every game. And now they try to sync up for round number 3. So I'm expecting them to restart any minute, but it was some complex thing with TV wants this and that. So it's, I would say, one game every 50 minutes on average, something like that.
Okay,
actually,
so I'll be back then.
Actually, Queen F3 is the main line. I gave this whole speech about Queen E1 being the main line in that position, but after Queen F3, I was apparently in the videos trying to make something absolutely crazy work with bishop b7 and then giving up the pawn on g7. I don't know if the computers just flat out refute that or not, but yeah, I'm giving something else altogether in the videos.
So next game we will have Magnus with the white pieces. We'll be looking for blood. We saw him storm off there, and as I mentioned, he won't be happy to have this 10-15 minute, I guess 10-minute break after the game. He would love to just continue playing to get his revenge. Hikaru must be feeling good about himself now. He's wounded. I don't know. I feel bad about animal references ever since Tiger King. He's wounded the champion, and he's he's gonna like his chances now.
Yeah, I'm sure Hikaru is extremely happy right now because losing the first game, and in particular the fashion in which he lost it, he got a theoretical position which is not supposed to be anything much, and just proceeded to kind of lose it without seemingly making too many glaring mistakes. Although Sasha, as is his wont, he showed up and instantly showed us what was the one big mistake Hikaru made in that game, which we missed during the live show, but striking back instantly and ending the game with a mating attack, an actual mate on the board, that cheers you up no end, whoever your opponent is. And when that opponent is Magnus, that is some good vibes right there.
And I know Magnus is a bit of a troll, but I also know that he participates in this fantasy competition. So my theory is that he allowed himself to be checkmated on the board because he had chosen that option in the fantasy. Can't prove it, but we will find out eventually.
That's slanderous.
I think I'm right about this.
That's actionable accusations right there. Like, why would you ever say that, Jan?
You don't think so?
Spot fixing? No. World champion is not involved in spot fixing.
I'm not sure if he's eligible for prizes, but why would he allow himself to get mated on the board? Maybe he's just doing it for the new audience that aren't so used to chess, where he feels, okay, we have to show them how a game ends. And here, after king e6, it's obvious because it's checkmate. The king cannot go anywhere. While often new viewers, they're a bit confused. Why did this guy resign in a position that still looks like a mess and so on? Maybe the world champion is doing it for the masses. But my theory is he chose the option, yes, about a game ending in checkmate on the board.
Yeah, this makes me very uncomfortable.
He's got a bit of fantasy withdrawal syndrome, given that the football season has been postponed like many other sports. So he's got to have.
It must be so painful for him, no?
Yeah. Where was he before it got postponed? He was like top 20 in the world, right?
I'm not sure where he was exactly, but he is a legit world-class fantasy football black box, I believe is the term.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the games are actually underway, so we should
yep.
probably.
Here we are. Let's jump to Mr. Magnus. Same opening.
If it
Yeah,
ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and also there's absolutely no rules against the players actually getting some work done, some remedial work done in between the rounds. So I
You
assume
never know if
Hikaru.
Peter Heine is on the phone there, or
Of course he is.
probably not on the phone.
Well,
but
considering how game one went, it's more that Hikaru probably spoke to Chris Littlejohn, and these
is
now
he still
playing.
with Chris? Chris Littlejohn, his long time second helper, probably is. I just don't know how their relationship.
I think that was still very much the setup, at least reasonably of late. I mean, I can't speak English. And yeah, this is one of the main lines, and Magnus understandably declines the forced lines after bishop a6, b5, c6, which you briefly mentioned during our game one coverage, and goes for a quieter approach, which still gives him the kind of a position he likes. You know, spatial advantage, definite chances to improve eventually. But I think compared to game one, once again, this strategically this should be safer for black.
Well, he did go bishop a6 this time around, not bishop b7.
Exactly. Yeah, this is what I meant.
Yeah, and
So,
I think with h6 included, these takes and b5 things no longer work. Therefore, yeah, a little less material on the board, which generally is a good thing if you're cramped, no?
yeah, and this still remains a very, very intricate type of position, because there's all kinds of questions you have to consider. Black obviously has the option of opening up the A file whenever he wants and trading one pair. Well, always is wrong, because I think if you give white one more move, the rook probably will vacate the A1 square, because white wants to be the one making that decision of when the rooks do come off. But currently, with black to move, black obviously has the option of taking on b4, taking on a1, playing rook a8, and at least inviting white to get a lot of heavy pieces off the board. And it will be up to Magnus to decide whether he wants to allow all four rooks to come off, or if he goes rook b1, which I suspect is the reply there.
Note to producer, I cannot do this without this window appearing on the screen, so let's block the chessboard for a little bit. I should add the other game. Here we go.
Yeah, and the other game, Ding with the white pieces against Firouzja, is the most odd.
I know this position.
Well, Peter, you know most positions, don't you? I mean,
No, but this position in particular, I was not involved in preparing the line, but as Kirill's second, it brings a bit of a smile to my because this is the d4 knight b6 was pioneered by Kirill Alexeyenko in his very important round 10, I believe, game in Isle of Man, where he defeated Sergei Karyakin with the black pieces, and that was basically the game that got him into the candidates.
And everybody and their grandmother is wondering, hold on, Lawrence, you told me never put a knight on b6. Dr. Tarash said knights on b6 are bad. Or, you know, queen's knight 3, I should say, I think was the exact phrasing. So let's explain why Alireza has done this and spent 2 tempi to put the knight on such a funny square. Should I continue, or
no one's helping you here? Keep
okay,
going.
nobody's helping. It's to prevent c4, guys, to prevent all of this Catalan business.
Correct, you are. It does sound a bit odd, and I don't think anybody will make an argument that the b6 square is a particularly natural square for the black knight, and you don't often see black wasting 2 tempi to get it there as early as move 3 in any opening. And I remember there was some raised eyebrows when Kirill has done that against Karyakin, but it does sort of stand the engine test. it's not something he decided on over the board, I think is safe to say. And I think the reason we're doing this is that against the knight of 3 g3 bishop g2 lines, making very, very sure that your center gets unchallenged is so beneficial to black that you can actually afford to spend 2 tempi on these slightly weird knight moves.
Kids these days, kids and their lila zeros.
Yep.
I mean, Botvinnik would be doing his nut looking at that. But times have changed.
Yeah, I think people would have been kicked off the Botvinnik school if they chose to bring that game to a session and show it to the patriarch.
You would have been sent out and forced to chop trees.
Alexander, were you in the Botvinnik school, or are you too young for that?
No, I was in Kasparov Nikitin school for a bit.
Are those competing schools, or was that a successor to the Botvinnik school?
Yeah, it's successor because Botvinnik first brought Kasparov to his school as sort of his helper, and then Kasparov with Nikitin took it basically. No,
Lawrence, how was it for you?
Yeah, I was in the Hodgson
Arkle, probably.
Arkle school of trying.
Time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen.
That the internet was broken for a moment, but it seems like the internet is back and the guys are still playing. Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura, the world champion with the white pieces. Russian world-class players. Is white better here? Has Hikaru equalized? What's happening?
I don't really know, and the thing I sort of do know about the structure, I think, was told to me by Sasha some 10 years ago, and I think I mentioned it in a annotation for one of the games I played, and he was very upset with me. So I'm staying very, very silent today, and maybe he will be. I'm hoping he will be explaining it to the audience at large about this position, because he knows, and I only copy.
Definitely, it's much better for him than the first game. That one is for sure. And,
for Hikaru,
no, of course, yeah. He won 2-3 tempis compared to the first game. I don't know why he played bishop b7 in the first game, and now he just playing normally, and but you cannot draw conclusions yet because it's not settled down at the moment. So I guess he will play some bishop c7 now, and the question is, what is Magnus' plan? I guess, judging by queen c1, it's maybe take on a8. No, okay, take on c7, take on a8, play rook a1. Yeah, and that's what he does. But
Doesn't look like much,
it's
no?
an advantage or not, I don't know. I guess queen b7 now is the most logical move.
Do you do some rook a3 fighting for the a
Yeah,
file?
maybe rook a3 and I don't know.
It really doesn't feel like this is very much, right?
No, yeah, of course. No, I mean, compared to first game, it cannot be much. Yeah. I mean,
even if we take it separately, just like the normal way these positions go, I think if all the rooks disappear so early and white hasn't really achieved very much yet, it should be not really all that bad for black.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, Magnus playing this bishop f4, queen's gambit all the time, and it was just some kind of, I don't know, by chance or by what, that everyone was playing c5 against him. Yeah, the first Fabiano and Nakamura, then some games with b6, but he did not face knight bd7 for a long time, and I mean, he definitely prepared something against knight bd7, so that might be one of the things that he prepared. I mean, so I mean, maybe.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like this actually, you know, comes even close to refuting the line. If this is the most you can get against bishop a6.
No, but you cannot refute queen's gambit.
Yeah, that is, I think, a fair assessment. Refuting queen's gambit hard.
It's possibly like Fabiano. I had when I saw that Van Hau played Petrov against him, I had very high hopes for this game, but alas, no refutation.
Yeah, every time somebody who plays a very solid opening with black actually gets to play it with white, you have that game open, and your heart beats a little bit faster because you think, maybe today I will learn something that will, you know, allow me not to work it out myself. But no, very rarely happens.
So we will leave this somewhat dry position between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and the Blitz #1, who just left his seat. Hikaru Nakamura has time to go for a little stroll there, and switch to Ding Liren, the world #3 in classical chess.
And I got a little inside scoop here, which I'm very happy to share. I did mention the Karyakin Alexeyenko game, which was played in Isle of Man, but apparently Kirill played this line with the black pieces against Firouzja himself on one of the servers, and that may have been the final straw which pushed Firouzja into the knight d7, knight b6 camp himself. So there's a lot of cross pollination going on right now between.
Such a mess.
I don't think it's the second one.
No, I don't think we're taking on d4 before we castled. I think allowing bishop a3 and getting stuck on e8 would be ill-advised. I don't see how castles is refuted, but even something simple like some positional play like bishop a3 followed by knight b3 gives white very, very good compensation.
Mm-hmm.